Blessings in Jesus, dear friends. Welcome to Catching Up with Jacob. Jacob has caught up with an airplane today, and he has arrived back in Israel, where there's quite a lot going on and quite much discussion as the Islamic feast of Ramadan draws to its peak. There is an anticipation of further violence on the Temple Mountain and the area surrounding it, and that's one of the main features in the news in Israel this week, but also the increasing threat of Iran and the further alienation from the United States under the Biden administration, which is trying to make a peace deal with Iran. At the same time, Iran is stepping up not only its rhetoric, but its practical preparations for some kind of an attack. We see this already underway in Syria, where the Israelis are repeatedly engaging Iranian and Iranian-backed targets inside Syria, as well as Iran's hand in events in Gaza with Hamas and with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So Israel is focused on events concerning Iran, while the Biden White House is focused on trying to make a resurrection of the treaty that Obama tried to push through with Iran that was never even ratified by the Senate. At the same time, Iran is now into a rapprochement with Saudi Arabia, also thanks to the Biden administration, that was brokered by China. Now, this shows the loss of leverage and influence the United States has experienced under the present administration. Again, I do not plan to vote for Mr. Trump again for certain reasons, but I did vote for him the previous two times. Had Biden not been president, had Mr. Trump been elected or reelected, you would not have seen this happening with Iran. It would not be happening. You would certainly have not have seen the invasion of Ukraine by Mr. Putin, and you would not have seen China's saber rattling, nor North Korea's new ballistic missile aggression if Mr. Trump had still been the president. This is a weak president that the world knows is weak, that after his debacle in Afghanistan, the signal was sent to America's enemies. You have what's difficult to describe anything other than a politician general in Miley in the Pentagon, who himself raises questions of his loyalty to the United States when he is reported to have made the phone call to China during the last presidential election. Who was he to go above the head of his commander-in-chief and talk to a potential enemy? But that's what he did. Yet instead of being relieved of his command and ideally court-martialed, he's not been. If he's guilty of those things, that man should die in Leavenworth. Instead, he's still the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He and Austin, at a time when China and Russia are becoming more aggressive, are saying that the main priorities of the Pentagon have to be inclusivism and have to be climate control. This is what they're talking about. At a time when our enemies are becoming more aggressive, they are showing our enemies that they're wearing ladies' underwear. And I don't mean that as an offense to ladies, but I do mean it as an offense to feminine leadership that is not exuding any kind of male virtue. Now, believe me, I'd much rather have a Margaret Thatcher in the White House than a Joe Biden. Not all ladies are weak by any means, but she was not masculine. Biden, however, is feminine. He's surrounded by effeminate men, weak men. And he himself obviously is not in his right mind. He's somebody who he's a man of low intelligence anyway, just a professional politician. But now there's incipient dementia on top of it, in the opinion of any thinking person. Just look at the stumbling, bumbling nonsense he's been saying in Ireland, the land of his ancestors, and on my mother's side, my ancestors. Totally hideous. The situation in Ireland on the 25th anniversary of the so-called Good Friday Agreement is one in which the political climate has very much changed. The Sinn Féin party, who are the Irish nationalists, have made major electoral gains. And for the first time demographically now, the Irish Catholic population of Northern Ireland is overtaking the Protestant population. Things cannot continue the way they are there for an indefinite period of time. Something must change. The unionist parties are trying to hold on to what clutches of power remain, but this has particularly come to a head because of Brexit. What is going to be the status of Northern Ireland in a post-Brexit Britain, when the Republic of Ireland is still in Europe? It is a complicated debacle, and it's one of which Joe Biden does not even have the mental wherewithal to understand, let alone deal with. He just does what he's told by Obama's cronies. And the extreme left of the Democratic Party. But the world knows it. The world knows it. The only people I know of in the world, and I travel the world globally, I spend most of my time in the Middle East, Europe, Britain. The only people in the world who do not know that Joe Biden is a buffoon are the American left, or the Americans who voted for him. Now let's look at what's happening in the United States even as we speak. We have another person who's not like Mr. Snowden. He was someone from the Air National Guard of Massachusetts, a very liberal state, who has simply put in the public domain something that the establishment, the White House, and the mainstream media was trying to hide. Now, let's understand what's really, really going on here. 3 weeks ago, Schumer and the Democratic Party leadership was up in arms that Tucker Carlson released films showing what really happened on January 6th, that the Capitol Police was showing the demonstrators around, that it was not violent, it was not what the government lied and said it was, holding people without bail, behaving like a fascist regime. And when Tucker Carlson, showed these films, it was considered an outrage because it exposed the fact that the government was lying, the Justice Department was certainly lying and is lying, and that the mainstream media collaborated in the lies. It exposed the networks, it exposed CNN and MSNBC and the Washington Compost and the New York Slimes for what they were. It exposed the fact that they were not telling the truth about January 6th. So the big uproar, the big outrage is not that the government lied. No, the mainstream media wants the big story to be that someone put out the proof that they lied. Now it's happening again. I'm not defending the actions of this individual or this individual. But what they're really uptight about, what they're really incensed about, is it shows the truth about Ukraine. We've been saying for months and months and months that things are not going as badly in Russia as we're being told. They're going badly, but not nearly as badly as we are being told by the American government or by the European Union. The powers in Europe and the United States have not been telling the truth about what's really happening in Russia as a result of the Ukraine. Yes, Russia has been hurt in certain sectors, but overall, Russia's economy will grow twice as much in 2023 as the American economy under Biden. That is the impact of America's leadership in terms of bringing these sanctions against Russia. It has not hurt Russia nearly as much as we're being told by the mainstream media, by our corrupt governments, and by the European Union, and by NATO. Not nearly as much. Not only that, the war itself is not going nearly as well. The Ukrainian casualty figures are astounding. Russia is willing to pay that price in human life. Yes, they've sustained a lot of casualties, a lot of fatalities, but Putin doesn't care. He's fighting for self-political preservation, among other things. He doesn't care. As we've said repeatedly, that Zelensky is nothing more than a lesser of two evils. He's not a good man. It's just that Putin is a worse one. We've not been told the truth by the media. I've seen corruption in the FBI, going back to the Contopro operations of J. Edgar Hoover. I've seen what we then called the intelligence community, now called the deep state. I've seen their willingness to work against the national and public interest. None of these things are new to me or surprising. It's just that now it's happening on such a scale that there's no dissent against it. There's no real dissent against it from the left. The left buys into it and is controlled by it. Just look at Biden's proposals this week to force electric vehicle purchases in the United States to overtake combustion engines. Well, again, the stupidity of people who think electricity comes out of the wall. That is going to require fossil fuel generated energy. That's the only way you're going to get it. You couldn't build pebble-cooled nuclear reactors fast enough to meet his goal within the time frame that he says. Not only that, he's creating a windfall for China, who manufactures these lithium batteries and these other batteries and iron-based batteries. The environmental hazards of producing those batteries and of the mining of rare earth metals, rare earth minerals, are economically advantageous, but they are environmentally disastrous. Now, this just proves that the left, certainly the establishment, does not care about the environment. It shows they do not care about the environment. But to Mr. Biden, this is just another excuse to line China's pockets. He allowed the Chinese to put a reconnaissance balloon over some of the most important strategic defense sites in the United States. He allowed that. His son was on China's payroll. What's happening here? I find it very difficult to believe that Biden himself is not in all probability compromised. He may even be a Chinese asset, literally a Chinese asset. And I'm not exaggerating. That's how far it's gone. Men like Nixon were corrupt. They were willing to sell the country down the river. But Biden, Harry Truman sold the country down the river. He gave Eastern Europe to Russia on a silver platter. But Biden is willing to give America away. That is how far and how serious it has become. These things are undoubtedly of prophetic significance. But what is happening to the Western world, including the United States, is undoubtedly the judgment of God. We've turned our backs on him as a nation and a people. Finally, when you look at what's happening in the church, you look at what's happening with the church. One of Hollywood's big marketing efforts at the moment is to attempt to relaunch the acting career of Russell Crowe. A new Gladiator film, a sequel is being made, and he's not starring in it, but instead he is in a movie about exorcism and the Vatican. And this kind of theme is being mimicked by people involved in the New Apostolic Reformation. So at a time when persecution of believers is increasing in the United States, certainly in Canada, in Great Britain, what is the reaction of the church? At a time when the transgender issue has reached a paramount where we're fighting over the future of our children, what is the reaction of the evangelical church? Is it radical evangelism? Is it confronting these issues? No, rather it is a stupid movie propagating the unscriptural notion of casting believers out of demons, something we've pointed out a number of times over many years that is never done in Scripture. The apostles, the early church, cast demons out of non-believers. Not one place is a demon ever cast out of a saved Christian in Scripture. It was never taught by the apostles. It is simply an invention of lunatics believed by ignorant Christians who are essentially unskilled in the Word of God and who have no discernment. And they're following these crackpots. Even Locke, the main filmmaker, ask him if he left his wife and took off with another woman and married her. What's he even doing in the ministry? What are any of these people doing? This is the state of the church. Now, I can go on about Biden, and I can go on about what's happening on the global stage and what's happening here in Israel. And it's important we note these things because they're all of prophetic importance. But what's most important is the state of the church. And the state of the church is as depraved as anything. as you will find in the Biden White House or in the Kremlin or in Buckingham Palace or anywhere else. That is the reality. Please bear with us. We're going to be exploring these issues now. I'm now going to hand this over to Marco. I'm away in the Middle East and we do have connection problems, but God bless you. Hope to catch you next week.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of Catching Up with Jacob. And Jacob was catching up with us earlier. He's actually in Israel right now, and not only fighting jet lag, but just fighting bad internet signals and all that stuff. But he is in Israel today. So we're not going to have Jacob on, to the disappointment of many. But we do have other brothers and that are here with us. As normally, we have David Lister. David, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Marco. Enjoying
Praise
this
God.
beautiful spring day in Tennessee.
Amen. Well, it's a chilly, colder Southern California morning, if I could say that. That sounds like not something you would expect, but nonetheless, it rained actually yesterday again. So it's the way. Maybe global warming is true, right? No, I'm just kidding. But nonetheless, Jay, how are you?
Good, Marco. Good to see you. Hello to everybody.
Yeah, it was a blessing, brother. And thank you for Wednesday. It was very good. Lots of good feedback. You're on Wednesday, so praise the Lord for that. And from way down under, Davey. How are you, Davey?
Hey, morning. God bless you, brothers. Good to be with you.
Good morning on a Saturday morning. Praise the Lord. God bless you. Such a blessing, Davey. Just want to welcome everyone who's watching from Facebook to YouTube to Telegram to Vimeo, of course, Rumble, of course, Memorial.tv. Make sure you guys get on, because ultimately we're going to go to backstage and we're going to be asking questions on Rumble, taking questions on Rumble. And of course, Memorial.tv, our flagship, it's on right now, so you can get on there, and we'll be posting this message a little bit later. And of course, it'll be on podcast too. So get a hold of the podcast schedule. Many wonderful teachings there, many wonderful not only Bible teachings, but also interesting topics, like in Ken's Corner with James and Ken. It's been doing really well. So get a hold of those episodes and more to come. So we welcome those who are watching, and make sure that you're on for backstage. We'll be leaving YouTube and Facebook, and we'll go on backstage on our other platforms. But you can ask the questions. You can ask the questions on Rumble. So it'd be a good idea to get on Memorial.tv. Keep Rumble on, maybe run it in the background to ask the questions if you would like. But nonetheless, welcome in the name of the Lord. And we got a couple of things going on. David, you got any announcements, David, before we get on? I know Jacob's coming. Jacob's coming to the States.
Yeah, we're getting ready to start. Mia and I, along with her son, will be heading up towards the north a bit and going through Columbus, Pittsburgh, then over to Baltimore, and then up to New York to pick up Jacob, where Jacob will be with us on the second half of the fellowship tour. And then he will be coming down in through Virginia, also Washington, D.C., Roanoke, I forgot one, but Knoxville and Bristol, right outside of so anyway, we've got that going on. It's going to be really good to see everybody. We're having fruit from the first drive. People are making subgroups and meeting together. In fact, there's going to be a meeting this weekend with one of the groups. They're going to gather every month. So we hope to see people and hope to connect them all up. And I'm glad that Jacob's coming, and Marco, I guess, is invited us to come out to Devore the weekend of the 21st of May. So look forward to seeing everybody there.
Well, absolutely. Well, it'll be a lot of fun, and maybe we can do it on the West Coast too. So it'll be a lot of fun. Get a hold of the schedule. It's all there on the website. Get a hold of that information. If you haven't received the email that comes out in Constant Contact, you can do that as well. Sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get emails and information not only on Jacob studies, where they are, and but also information like this, the tour, and the schedule and meetups, which I hope we can do in the future. Some wonderful meetups, not only on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, and getting all of God's people together as we see the day approaching. Let's not forsake the assembling of one another. So I think that's it for the announcements. I don't think we got anything else. Let's get started on the topics at hand. And David, you're going to take questions later on today, right? So there'll be questions directed to you. All right, that'd be awesome. All right, David, couple of things, and I know Jay wants to talk about this stuff too, and we welcome David in his input as well. Is the wars that are getting dangerously close, and what I mean by dangerously close, there's always been wars, and whenever Christians quote Jesus from Matthew 24, wars and rumors of wars, there's the the natural skeptic. The obvious skeptic who's going to come out and say, well, you Christians talk about wars and rumors of wars all the time. You Christians mention this. Since my grandmother been telling me about wars, it's always been around. It's been around since the time of Jesus. Why should wars be such an issue? Why should you point to wars as a clear sign of the coming of Jesus? And there is a clear evidence now that not only are wars in the world escalating in terms of the amount of wars, but the type of wars, we've never seen this before. Not only nation against nations, but nations that have the power in and of themselves to destroy the world. That's never happened before. It always used to be just one or two nations that had that power. Now, David, you see a tremendous amount of war, the amounts of war in the world, but also the kind of war that we're looking at is nuclear, the kind of war that will happen between nations. It's not just the superpowers like Russia and the US, it's also Pakistan, it's also India, it's also China, Great Britain, the attacks on Israel. So let's break it down a little bit here, because we're going to get into the leaked documents that were found and basically put all over the internet, and basically the Russia-Ukraine war and our involvement, the U.S. involvement in it. It involves the whole world, but specifically the U.S. We'll talk about that, because I think that would be a subject that maybe not be welcomed in certain social media platforms. But no doubt, NATO, Russia, the U.S. are involved in this war in the East. So let's start in the East. Let's start in Russia and Ukraine. But let's first answer the question, why should Christians be concerned about these wars unlike other times?
Okay, first off, Jesus said that he would tell us these things in advance so that we might know who he is. That's the most important thing. As we see everything coming together, we're not just seeing an earthquake here, an earthquake there. We're not just seeing a rumor of war here, a rumor of war there, or a war here, war there. But now what we're seeing is things on a pandemic scale. We're seeing the whole world being drawn into this. We're seeing the realignment of nations and the tensions. We're seeing tensions between not just Israel and Iran, but we're seeing the tensions between now Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Iran, all gathering together with a common enemy. That common enemy is Israel and also America. Like the Saudi prince has just said he's not going to be pleasing America anymore. So we're seeing this realignment, and the tensions are going good. The Bible puts it, there'll be anxiety among all the nations and all the peoples. And this is what that level is increasing all the time. And the birth pangs that it talks about are more intense, and they're coming closer and closer together. So this is for us to know. And one of the things that the reason God tells us this, and it's important for us to know, is that we're supposed to take these prophetic truths that we see, and we're supposed to be living like we're in that last hour and that Jesus is coming soon. Are we actually applying what we know to our lives so we can be a people ready to see him when he comes? And that's a lot of the church is not doing. So let's pray that those that hear this will get themselves ready, because he is coming.
Absolutely. And obviously, if you've seen, and then people have done this, and it's nothing new, we didn't invent it. People have done this. They've looked at the last 150 years, and the major scrimmages or major wars or regional wars. And I believe they came to the conclusion that there's only been about a 10-year period in the whole world of history, in the last 150 years, where there was actual peace in the world, meaning the majority of humanity's history and most contemporary history, it's been wars and rumors of wars, not only regional wars, civil wars. Also, we've had the two major wars, and it seems like we're heading down another war that may include a lot of nations, and including Europe, including United States, including Australia, New Zealand, in terms of solidarity against what they consider a major power would be Russia and China. But we'll talk about the leaked documents at the end, David, so we can put them on backstage.
Sure.
But that certainly has been a big issue over the past, let's say, over the past week, in terms of what it's been portrayed to the American people or to the world, and what's really been happening in the war in Ukraine. And it's surprising, maybe not surprising here, because we've been talking about the fact that there has been concerns about U.S. troops in Ukraine. Now it's been confirmed. There has been concerns about British military in Ukraine already fighting Russia, and that has been confirmed again. So it's not a proxy war anymore, in my opinion. And now it's become an issue of two superpowers, if you want to consider NATO, US as one, and Russia and its allies. And now we know that there's been lies. Now we know that there's been some underhandedness. And of course, Jesus talked about lies and people that are being deceived. And we see that, of course, in our nation. But let's talk about this, Russia's response to this. Liz Truss, which is the former prime minister, she lasted about a minute in the UK, came out and said, well, Ukraine needs to be fast-tracked into NATO. And she still has some pull in the UK, I would imagine. And this has actually unleashed the Kremlin to reveal some of its, I guess you would say, its rhetoric has ramped up. No, the Black Sea is not going to be NATO. No, NATO is not going to take over the Black Sea or Eastern Europe. And now this is the Kremlin's response to the UK. Biden's response is, well, I don't even know if he had a response. He's been in Ireland recently, getting barked by dogs and telling people not to jump. His main concern is, of course, climate change. His main concern is inequality of transgenderism. What do we make of this potential war? Or maybe you could say it's already a war that started. As you said earlier, we're already in a war. When you have leaders calling for or ramping up war, other leaders saying, no, we're not going to, you're not going to take our areas. And you have, you would say, probably the leader of the free world, absolutely lost in his tours, not knowing what's going on, not taking questions. I guess only one person has really made the true statement of this is a world war and we need to stop it. And that was Donald Trump. Not that I agree with everything he said, but I agree with him on this. What do we make of this war number one, we'll call it? What do we make of this?
Well, the world is on the edge that just a single spark could set all these different events into a quick burning fire that may not be able to be put out quickly. You have China threatening to annihilate Taiwan or take it. Maybe America will be able to defend against that, maybe not, but then we would be in a direct conflict with China. You've got Russia has moved nuclear weapons up into Belarus and is threatening Finland. We have, maybe, I've said this before, death by 1,000 cuts of people that have infiltrated America and causing things. Now, I don't know anything, but when you start seeing 18,000 cows being blown up in an explosion at once, you see factory fires burning huge amounts of chickens, and you see all sorts of infrastructure going wrong and problems and trains and derailments. Like, I used to work on the trains, and even when the railroad wasn't that good because it was down in the 70s, we didn't have that many derailments, we had common sense, and we made sure that you went slow in bad places and stuff. But I've never seen all this, and everything could just go up in a minute. Or, like I said, we very well may be in a war already. We saw the destruction of the Nord Stream 2, which caused a lot of pollution into the air because of all that natural gas, that carbon dioxide and stuff being put in there. That was major scale. But who blew it up? That's a question. That was property of Germany, a NATO ally, and cost that country billions of dollars with extra heating costs. Plus, it was the property of the Russian government. And if they were to really determine that was Americans that blew it up, that would be an act of war.
That's right.
An open, overt act of war that they could actually come, and they would be justified, in doing it. Not that I would want them to, but all this is just, God says these people have hooks in their jaws and he's drawing them in. And this is what it looks like to me, because it's not just one place, it's everywhere. We're seeing the socialism in South America and everything. I think Jay's got something he wants to kick in.
Oh yeah, Jay, what's up?
I just wanted to point out, the generation, the adults that went through World War II, they are on the wane. They're the minority now. They are no longer in the seats of power. They're on the wane. And that memory of the horror of World War II and the battles, the suffering, the deprivations, they're out of the psyche of most modern day people that are in society now. And it just goes to show that men as a whole are doomed to forget.
Yeah.
Because if this generation tasted the bitterness that those adults had to live through, and again, we're talking about what we call in American history, the greatest generation, the generation that fought World War II. If they have to go through that, they're not made of the sterner stuff that generation was. I just do not see anything good coming from a World War III, and I do not see America coming out on top like it did on World War II.
The concerning thing to me too that I see too is kind of like the internal war as well too. It's kind of like, and it's not just the US, it's also Israel, where there's civil unrest within the countries, where almost both the US and Israel are kind of almost like on the brink of the civil war itself. To fight a battle on one front is bad enough, but to fight a battle on many fronts, plus dealing with internal civil unrest, is almost, it's impossible. And I can't help but think of what the Bible says, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And that is probably the big fear. And also, we're getting back to what Jay said too, back in World War II and stuff like that, like our parents worked together, they would help one another through things. They would barter and exchange things. Someone would make home preserves and share with others. We've become such a very selfish society. Kids are so close. I mean, kids don't even talk to each other unless it's on these devices nowadays. They'll be in the same room and they'll still communicate on one of these things. It's quite concerning where we're at.
I would like to add another facet of this. There's actually a currency war going on to destabilize America and also a whole world currency. There's an assault on the American dollar because of the incompetency of our government, and the rise of the power of China trying to create baskets of currencies, trying to allow people to trade oil in their own currency. And plus, we're having realignments. Now we have Egypt has sent 40,000 rockets to Russia to help them. They used to be an ally of ours to a degree after the peace treaty with Israel. So the whole thing is spinning, and it's almost like all you have to do is push the lever on the toilet and it's all going to start spinning around.
It's all flushing down anyway. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. We're closer to war than we most probably realize. And Jay's absolutely right about that greatest generation. They dealt with things, and some of them were children of those who went through the Great Depression. Those who fought in World War II had grandparents and parents that went through the Great Depression. Some of them themselves went through the Great Depression. So it is a different mentality, isn't it? Because we really haven't had it. The young people have not even, I mean, they hear stories and they think it's like some ancient myth. But there were people that lived through it. They understood what society was about. They understood, as Davey's point, community and helping each other. And yet many of them turned to the gospel because of the suffering and the difficulties. And the world hasn't had things like this. And now we're teetering on the verge of that. And most people don't pay attention to it. Most people, I would say, a great majority of people in the world don't have an understanding of what's going on. And if they do have an understanding of what's going on, they may take the position of, well, these things always happen. And then things go back to normal again. And then we'll go through it again and things go back to normal. But here's the president of Taiwan, Tsai Ing-wen. She was at Simi Valley, just not too far from here, met with Kevin McCarthy about the blockade that China was basically ready to, full-blown blockade, ready to step into this reunification campaign. And they ran this mock invasion. It was amazing to see, and I don't mean amazing in a good way, amazing in that they had it all figured out how they're going to do it, and none of it involved any concern that the U.S. would actually even respond to it. That's very telling of how China sees the opportunity to do it now. I think, as Jacob talked about, they're ready to pounce because of the weakness. Macron met with China and the president of China, or the Jinping, and he basically stood on the sideline and said, we're not going to follow America. We're not going to react to all this. I guess it has a lot of money involved in China. But David, what do you think? It's Europe there is basically backing out?
NATO is divided amongst itself. What's to gain here? They got Russia can bring them gas and energy and everything, and we're not doing it. And China is willing to trade goods and service to make everybody whole again. But I don't trust much of NATO to follow us. But then we're not leading anymore. So the thing to be able to follow us is, I don't think we can really do anything. We've talked about before on Catching Up the amount of ammunition that we have. Yeah. We've given it all to Ukraine. We have maybe a week, 2 weeks worth of ammunition, and then we're done. Well, if China and its enemies have been stockpiling, so they're ready to fight a long war. But it's insane how weak we've got. One of the differences, when I was thinking about what Davey said, is those people that went to World War II, that greatest nation, they loved America. They knew it had warts. They knew it had problems, but they loved it. And they wanted to fight for it, for their children and for their wives and for all this. They were willing to die for it, to lay their life down for their friends and for America and the idea that is America. But today's younger generation, now my generation, I always loved America, but I loved it differently than they did. I saw more warts. I saw more problems, and where we didn't just say yes, sir, and do the job. We questioned authority. And so, but I still love and believe in America, but not like I used to, because I see it's because of bad government, it's falling apart really badly. And then also the generation I see behind me, they don't love America. They think it's a bad place. I think this wokeness that's going through. But when I travel the world, guys, people are still wanting to come here. I don't know how many offers of marriage I've had. Truthfully, women want to come here, and they say because it's my destiny for my children. People see it differently when they're out there, and they said, yeah, we know you have problems, but we know we can, it's still a good country, and here in Nashville we have a lot of Egyptians, and they're Christian Egyptians, and I meet them in and around, and they say they faced actual persecution, and they say
Yes.
what they saw is coming here, and privately they say, Americans are being stupid. By what they're doing and what they're going to lose.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Marco, to what David just said, I just wanted to add, we focus a lot on NATO. We focus on what the Europe and the United States are coming up with, but nobody's focusing on the fact that China and Russia now have a very close relationship. And how easy is it for Xi and Putin to get together and say, look, they've deployed most of their strength in Europe. You can do whatever you want on your
Pretty
side
much.
of the world, and they're going to be powerless to do anything against you. And when they redeploy, you can do whatever you want in Europe. And both countries, both China and Russia, historically are just going after what they view as a runaway province. China views Taiwan as a strange province that's going to come back. In the same way, Putin views Ukraine as an estranged province that belongs to Russia. So they both have the same goals.
Yeah, some kind of reunification methods of bringing Ukraine back. I mean, the reality is, it's true. I mean, the CCP, I mean, it's warped, but the CCP came into China, right, with Mao and the revolutionary, the War Revolution, Boxer Rebellion before, but the communist revolution, where they imprisoned all the Christians and they took China, the leaders of China, and they went to Taiwan with Chiang Kai-shek. And so ever since then, the CCP is wanting Taiwan back. And in the same way, when Ukraine was independent after the Soviet Union collapsed and all that, they've been wanting it back, because they see it. You're right. They see it as part of Russia, part of the old Soviet Union. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the financial aspect of it. And we talked about earlier, China is selling off treasuries, U.S. treasuries, as it prepares for this blockade. So they're dumping a lot of things that's going to affect the dollar. And then you have the semiconductor chip industry, which is a lot of it. The high-end chips are based in Taiwan. And of all things, Warren Buffett, and he's selling off his stocks of the semiconductor TC, I think it's called Taiwan Semiconductor, TSMC, I think it's called. And it's one in the world. Yeah, the biggest one in the world. And also Senator Tuberville is putting his options for their put options. So against the company, meaning it's shorting it. David, what do you make of this? Let me ask you two questions. Do you think China will invade Taiwan? And secondly, do you think that's going to lead to a semiconductor chip crisis?
Well, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. Look, there's been a long time of propagandizing the young people in Taiwan that they're Chinese.
Yes.
They're Chinese, that they belong with us. And look, they could easily say, hey, why go to war? Let's reunite,
That's right.
and, so not knowing what it would cost them, but it would keep them out of war. So, sometimes people will just surrender instead of facing war. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Emergency meeting, hey, we'll be back with you in 5 years, and we'll do more business in semiconductors with you, do that. But China has long hated the West, from the Opium Wars, from all these things. And when the British ruled the world, they put China under their thumb, and they took Hong Kong, a pearl.
Yes.
And they and they subjugated them, and that's always been a sore spot in their thinking. So they don't like the West. Russia doesn't like America because, like you said, they want Russia reunited. Some people have said that that was one of the goals of Putin, is a complete reunification of Russia from when they were at their greatest under Peter the Great. That he wants to see that all reunited, and Peter the Great did have a big part in the Crimea and the Ukraine. So
That's right. Way back to that. The other part is the semiconductor crisis, David.
Oh, okay. For that would be a big problem for America because we're so technology minded. Now, the advancement and the design of all those chips certainly comes from America. And also China, they know they're behind in this. And so they need a Taiwan to be able to make this and then finally to exceed us. So it is in China's interest to not lose those factories. So a lot of threatening, saber rattling. Who knows what's going to happen? I pray we don't go to a world war, which could be with conventional weapons that we have can be really bad very quickly. I pray we won't have a limited nuclear war.
I read a report, and it's just on the financial side. It was done by, obviously it was done by a conservative wing of the Republican Party, but it was regarding, nonetheless, it was regarding the semiconductor chips. And what it read, it said that we would suffer if Taiwan is taken by China. We have no access to those high-end chips, that it'll be like a reduction in GDP of about 9 to 10%.
Yeah. And
GDP.
then combine that with all the AI that's taking jobs away, America would be in depression.
You mentioned depression. They compared it to what happened in 1929, 1930, and I believe it was a drop of 7% at that point. It was a drop of 7%.
Eventually ending at like 33% as it got deeper and deeper. Yeah.
So if we're starting at 9%, just for Taiwan to be not have those semiconductor chips, the high end ones, it'll be a 9%. You could imagine down the road what it could lead to. So I don't think it's just something that I think Americans or believers should just ignore. What about the test in North Korea? What about those? It just seems like Kim Jong-un is just continuing to saber rattle. You got problems in South Korea. Japan obviously had a crisis. They averted it because it was some kind of a mix-up in terms of where the
missile was going to land.
Yeah, but it sparked evacuation and confusion. It just seems everywhere you look, there's a crisis.
Well, Korea has had a history with Japan. A lot of their women were taken by force to Japan to be service for their soldiers, as well as used as slaves basically in Japan. And some were not even returned till up into the 70s and things like this, if my memory serves me, that they're sending them back. So there's that history there of North Korea does not like Japan. And China has the same problem with Japan because of the same sort of thing because of the invasion by the Japanese in World War II. And also Philippines is now trying to get involved here, and they keep saying China's threatening them, and America, I don't know, is building 3 bases there.
Yes.
And they've beefed up Guam, Anderson Air Force Base, to be able to forward support for the Far East. But one of the things, China's military, its Navy, doesn't have long range operations. But if we were to go into a depression like you talked about, or at least a deep recession, you have to start pulling your forces back.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so, like when we see this realignment of the Sunnis and the Shiites together, well, it would not be out of the realm of possibility of Taiwan just going back to China and say, hey, we're in.
Wow. So North Korea has launched 100 missiles since the start of 2022.
Yeah.
And but when you talk to the UN or you read the UN of what they're saying, they're not really mentioning all these wars. In fact, the only thing that the UN is concerned about is the emergency platform. They said they call it vast powers for the emergency powers, which in reality what that means is the UN can come in, and if there's an emergency, which they don't really define what that emergency could be quite a bit of things. There's a protocol that they have to follow in order to take over nations that are in trouble. Now, it could be a financial crisis, it could be a medical crisis, in my opinion, but it is very, very puzzling to me that the UN, in the midst of the risk of war, I mean, the edge of a war, they're more concerned about common agenda, a summit for the future, emergency powers, which by this, no kidding, the State Department and the Biden administration said they're in full support of the UN and their emergency powers. So it becomes kind of strange. David, in your own interpretation of this, unravel this. Why is the UN not even concerned for these wars?
Well, they were made, going back to President Hoover and Wilson, to establish this would be the Great Peace. We could be and meet together, and then we could have worldwide peace. Well, there ain't going to be no worldwide peace. There's never been any worldwide peace. Like you said, just a few years. There was a few years after World War II that we had several years of peace, about 5 or 6. But my dad was actually in China with the war there in 47. So can't really say, he was on the Chinese expedition there. And the Russians and the Chinese had problems there with one another.
Shooting out.
Yeah. So it's just with these, I lost my thought for a second here, but with the, I've lost my thought. I'm so sorry there, Marco. Say the question just shortly again.
How the UN has been so active,
yeah.
not against the threat of war, but more about consolidating power through these, they call it emergency actions, the common agenda, summit for the future.
Yeah.
No mention of let's stop China, let's sit down with Russia, let's deal with the US. None of that, just more consolidation of power. What do you think that is?
They don't want to deal with the peace and the war because they know they have 60 years of working for world peace. They've gotten none. But what they do see a way of grabbing power is it was first exhibited kind of with run for what they're going to do next. If we do have a war, we do have some famines, they'll be able to come in there and start inoculating people. But that's what we hear from the World Economic Forum. That's what we hear from our own leaders through abortion and genocide of the Black culture. We see all sorts of different ways for population control. And what better way than to tell them they're giving them a cure, So.
It just seems like there's a strain. I mean, there's World Health Organization is going to have their meeting soon. There's a new strain out somewhere in India in the East and China, and that's really what they're waiting for is these some kind of crisis. It seems like to me, in order to enact these powers that they want to have. David, what do you think of this? That and then the WEF seeking water rights and water control. That just
I
seems
just
to me
did want
crazy.
to comment on the UN thing, emergency power thing too, just because if I read and understand this right, it's not only going to be like like in conjunction with the WHO, even the possibility of a health scare or that sort of thing, Now, there was a reported death, I think, in China, reported
Yes.
death from the bird flu this
Yes.
past week. But also, if I understand this right, if war broke out in the Middle East, say, they could actually go in, seize control of Jerusalem and set it up as, oh, we need to take control of this,
Oh,
if
I
I
hadn't seen
understand it
that
right,
one.
that kind of thing is a possibility. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just, so
Right.
don't misunderstanding anyone. It is a possibility. So we tend to think of, okay, what they've done in the past, how they've seized power with, like the pandemic and stuff like that, locking people down, making people take procedures against their will. But it could also be used for a land grab like this too, to seize control or something. So that was my concern with the UN thing. With the water thing too. Yeah, very, very frightening. Very frightening, especially too. I read earlier during the week, and I was just trying to find the article before and refresh myself with it too, where the Biden administration basically outlined a plan, or they've got a plan there which could basically restrict or limit the water supply to certain areas and states in the US.
oh, yeah. Yeah.
Too,
Because
which
of the
kind
Colorado
of,
River. Yeah.
yes, yeah. So I wish Jay was here too, because I know Jay mentioned it a couple of weeks ago about the possibility, water wars and that sort
Water
of
war.
thing. The
Yeah,
control of the water.
We already have cities that had been helping other cities with water in Arizona have now said, hey, we're cutting you off because the water is going down. But I heard that California's reservoirs are filled back up. Is that correct?
They're filled back up. There's enough rain in the mountains and in the reservoirs.
Yeah, so how long it will go on, but certainly it would be, if you control water, you can control people. You can control their movements, you can control everything, because on this place, water is life, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So I guess the question, back to you, Davey, it's a question is, it's water a human right, or is it or some form of privilege that the World Economic Forum seems to want to bequeath certain people and not others?
Yeah, well, they're definitely taking the side that it's not a human right, that it is a privilege, and they've managed to say, oh yeah, and we get to be the ones who get to decide. I've always kind of thought when bottled water first come out, in I think it was the early 90s here, we always used to joke, bottled water, whoever thought that up, just taking a fortune selling, bottled water and that sort of thing. But really, this is taking it to a whole new level. It's crazy. Because we just used to think water, and they're making it harder for people to have their own, water tanks and stuff like that. They're really making it hard for people to be able to do that. You can do it.
Capture the rain.
Yeah.
Capture the rain.
Yep. And you think of all
Jay
these
looks
train
like he wants-
derailments.
Yeah, Jay looks like he wants to jump in.
I
Because
mean,
they're
to your point, Davey, I mean, I don't know what the WEF doesn't make not a human right. I mean, everything to them is something that to be controlled. In fact, clean air, I think, will come up sooner or later, where it's like, you're using too much oxygen. We need to take your mixture down.
Yep.
We'll tax you for your air.
Yep.
We'll tax you
We
for
used
your
to joke about that as kids when the bottled water come out. We kind of thought that, they'll be taxing you for the air you breathe next.
Yeah. The Beatles were right.
Yeah, they had a song about
tax
that. Yeah, what song was that?
The tax, it's called the tax man.
Taxman.
Yeah.
The taxman, that's right, the taxman. It'll be for the air you breathe.
And
Yeah.
they were mad because they were paying 90% tax on their earnings.
Oh man, the taxman.
Yeah,
Now,
so
let's put it together, because I think this is the ultimate where this is going. It's obviously control. obviously emergency actions to do that control, and what they'll control will be food and water and certain things that are basic to human life. But this is the next level, and this is how currency, a currency war, how currencies are going to work. The International Monetary Fund has just released their Unicoin, and it's not a joke. That literally you can go look at it online. Unicoin, which is basically a central bank digital currency issued by the the monetary bank. It's a universal monetary unit. It's sold like as a commodity, so you can actually get it. And it did not create it. It was actually created by the Digital Currency Monetary Authority, DCMA, which sort of sounds like this organization has always existed, but nobody knew about it, but they controlled it. And so they released it. Now the IMF is going to, I guess if you want to share or you want to sell it or buy it, you can do it among the nations. And it sounds really fishy to me. It sounds really bad. But they're not the only ones that can do this. The UK wants to do it. The European Union wants to do it. Now they can have their own, or they can use this one. Christine Lagarde, the head of the European Bank, was talking to an AI who she thought it was Vladimir Zelensky, and she, some people say, well, it wasn't. She wasn't spilling the beans, as it was. It was a setup. Some people think it was a setup. Some people think she was just off the cuff, talking about what's coming to the European market, which is going to be a central bank digital currency. It's going to be regulated, controlled. And even now, Europe has this crazy thing that it's illegal to have anything, transact anything over 1,000 euros in cash.
Yep.
This is what she's talking about. Now I'm going to turn it over to you guys. The EU is measuring this against money because of terrorism, they say, and laundering, money laundering and terrorism. That's what they're doing this for, which sounds sort of creepy to me. That's really not the point. The point is control, and the point is surveillance. So any one of you want to start off with, there is already a CBDC, not in the works. It's actually physically available in the UK, in the EU, and the US are shortly going to establish their own. Pretty scary thought. Whoever wants to start, Jay, we'll start with you.
All right. I mean, to me, it reminds me of like a perverted version of the rich farmer. I've worked my whole life to make money, to store that I might have some leisure. But before I can have some leisure, you fool, how dare you think that you can have leisure? The government's going to tell you how much leisure you can have, because even though you've worked your entire life to save and build this barn and fill it, we're only going to let you take so much grain out of your barn at any certain time. And if you take too much, we're going to have to take it away from you.
That's right.
1,000 euros. I mean, Europe is expensive. I don't think you can, I think that can go very fast. And one transaction, 1,000 euros in cash, can't do it. David, Lister, what do you think?
Well, banks don't like cash because it costs them money to transport it, to hold it, to guard it, and everything. And it's an inconvenience. It's much easier to make zeros and ones do the work. All right. But also the government, the reason they don't want cash, and which Ms. Lagarde said, oh, if you spend more of 1,000, you're going to be marked as working in the gray market. In other words, as a way to avoid taxes. You've often heard the term black market, which right. I'll give you the best experience for me was I was in Greece on a tour, and I pulled out my credit card to buy a T-shirt as a souvenir in Greece. And I said, how much? And this is back in the 90s. And he said, $26 US on the credit card. I said, well, how much for, I also had traveler's checks, and so I said, how much a euro? So it kept going down. And then it was like, if I had US dollars, it was $10. So I could give them 10. And so there wouldn't be no tax. There would be no transitions. They could take that and go buy from another person, restock, stuff like that. So the government wants every tax dollar it can get because they can't spend it fast enough. And so then plus they're all in hock up to their eyebrows or above their eyebrows. So every government is. And so it's a tax liability. They want that. So, but here in America, go to your bank, deposit some cash, take $200, $300 and make sure you take your debit card that you have at that bank or take your driver's license in if you want to deposit it. It's what's happening already. They don't want cash. It was customer hostile to show you who you are, you know, when they know you. You know, you've been banking there 10 years, they know you. No, it has to be recorded. Why does it have to be recorded? Because they want to know who's dealing in cash.
Gosh.
Just to
also
further
there-
the absurdity of what's going on here, we saw the video where Christine Lagarde was talking to what she thought was President Zelensky, but it really was an AI bot controlled by a bunch of hackers. This is the woman who's saying turn everything into zeros and ones when she is being fooled by hackers. What do you think is going to happen to your money? You
Yep.
think the zeros and ones are safe from the hackers that can go to the IMF lead
Mm,
and
Yeah.
fool her?
Yep.
yeah.
These guys can
This-
make a crisis and then say, look, out of their own stupidity and ignorance, and then say, look, we've got the answer to fix this. We can
Yeah.
ration everything. We can tell you, you know, we'll make sure everybody has enough to eat. Everybody has enough to have an existence.
I would rather give my money to Sam Bankman-Fried
At
than
least-
I would to someone who's out of touch with technology completely.
Yeah. So so Europe's going to vote on this digital coin in October. So this is coming
it's
fast,
coming.
people.
Yeah.
This is coming fast, and I believe America's got one in the hopper.
Yeah, in the fall.
So,
in the fall
and it would be really easy to merge all the coins and give them one single value, wouldn't it?
It would be very easy because now you're not dealing with currency in a sense of cash. You're dealing with zeros and ones, just binary
And
numbers.
everybody would be on a level playing field. You just got to
It's
have
interesting.
more of it.
All the all the governments are saying this is going to help us deal with inflation. And if you read
Yes.
carefully what they mean by that is it's not that things are going to go cheaper as we all assume because you have a digital currency now. What they mean by it, and I even had to reread the executive order that Biden had to read March 2022 was the fact that what they want to do is they want to control the purchasing of every single item, meaning that they can turn off certain items from being bought in order to keep the price stable. So if meat's going through the roof, then all of a sudden, well, you want to get your hands on some steaks, you can't buy them because your currency cannot buy steaks. So the price will regulate itself by not forcing no purchases to that item. So if you bought too much meat, if you bought too much ice cream, if you bought a car last year and you need a new car, all these things will be regulated. So that's how they're going to fight inflation. This is the craziest thing. And you know what, David? Most people are going to be slowly forced into this new digital system, and they're going to control everything with an iron fist. And most people are going to go willingly along with it. I don't know, and I'm just stipulating. I don't know if there's going to be an uproar from the people because I don't think many people know or even understand the concept of what this is going to look like in a couple of years or so.
Well, Germany had a hyperinflation, and to get out of it, they just created a new Dutch mark and and put a leader over them that promised them the world.
Yeah.
And he did a pretty good job. He got the railroads going. He got the automobiles working. He made it prosperous, but he also created war machines. And went to war again and destroyed 1,000-year Reich. Ended up 12 years in the hopper. So It's very well. Like, see, the old formula for inflation, the way you fix inflation is you would cut back and you would put people out of work. If you put people out of work, then there's not as much commodities being bought. And,
Yeah.
and so even though that theory has been disproved multiple times, and more so by like Reagan and Trump, but you don't have to fight it like that. You do it right and you can, but they're going this way. We're having all these layoffs in tech. We, from what I hear in Philippines, layoffs are happening. Other places where we have missionaries, their manufacturing is slowing down. If you look at the amount of ships coming through the seas, you remember where they used to be outside the harbor there in Long Beach? Well, now that we have so-called managed lines, but there ain't nothing out there. Why is everything slowing down? Why is all the boats just sitting in one, ships sitting in one place, kind of, overseas, and they're not moving across the seas the way they used to. So this manufacturing is slowing down, and it's probably
Yeah.
coming here. I could, like I've been saying for more than a year, we'll probably have a recession this year. We'll have more layoff effects, which will be hard on people. But as Christians, make sure your Christian brother is taken care of. Make sure think about them. See what you can do to share with all things held in common. Even though we're not the greatest generation that Davey talked about, but we can be a Christian generation that can help one another.
That's right.
We'll all move to the country because we country boys can survive.
Amen.
I had deer and turkey in my yards and all sorts of things. So
As we move just closer to the end of catching up, just want to remind everyone, thank you for watching, and we're so blessed to have you on, and those who will watch later, so blessed to have you on here with Davey, and Jay. He lives out in Israel today, and it is late in Israel, so we have to let him sleep. And but as soon as we finish catching up, for the next couple of subjects, we're going to be going to backstage. So if you're on Rumble, you can send your questions, and we'll start taking questions now. We've had so many questions the last few weeks, and it's been great. Can't get to them all. We'll try to get to them as much as we can today, but we appreciate the questions. We save them, and then we try to go through them systematically. And so if you're on Moriel.tv, if you're on Vimeo, if you're on Telegram, don't worry, we're not going to go anywhere for backstage. But if you are on Facebook and if you are on YouTube, we're going to go into the other platforms, so you can start jumping from those platforms into the other ones to make sure that you get your questions asked. So thank you so much. All right, David, Jay, and Davey, Israel in the Middle East. We'll go there, and then we'll go to issues in the church, which is some interesting stuff. Iran's planning a multi-front attack on Israel. They're meeting with Saudi Arabia. They're meeting with Syria. It seems like the Houthi groups in Yemen, Hezbollah, Hamas, are all being sponsored by Iran's terrorist organization. And one major place that it's all coming down to seems to be Syria and Damascus, which is the place where Israel has sent fighter jets to hit those military targets there. They were Iranian military targets, but they're actually near Damascus. So let's start there. This meeting with Saudi Arabia, you have Iran and you have Syria, probably in the first time in a long time, joining together in an effort to fight against not only the West, but they consider Israel, and also getting ready for some major wars. They believe these wars are coming, so they need to have some kind of unity in the Gulf region, which is in turns against Israel and the problems there. So David Lister, we'll start with you. Iran is using weapons to strike Israel. They're meeting with China and Russia, Saudi Arabia, you name it. They're meeting with everybody, and they're being welcomed by everyone. As 3, 4, 5 years ago, they were a threat. Now people are meeting with them. Did we sleep through something, and Iran has become the good guy?
Well, they'll never be the good guy, because we know the sword will never depart from his hand. It will be against everyone. and everyone will be against him. So, but the one thing that Islam tries to do, doesn't do it very successfully, is that if they have a common enemy, they'll get together. And that's what we're seeing right now is Israel is being seen as a problem. And so they're negotiating to see they're hurting our dear brothers in Palestine. They're attacking Syria. They're doing this, they're doing that. And so they're making the alliance for the survival of the Arab world. Hey, we could wipe out Israel, no problem. And well, of course, we know the Bible says if they do come against Israel, when it's finished, they'll be burying people for 7 years. So it's not advisable if you know the Bible. And God's not going to let them take Israel. But it could lead to worse things. But we have, but it is crazy how they're doing exactly what they all do. You have a common enemy, band together, go against the enemy. So that's what's happening in the Middle East. An old way that Islam does.
Once again, the Bible is 100% right. It predicted prophetically that nations will gather against Israel and come against them from the north. They attack them from the north. And one of the countries that's going to be severely harmed by this is Damascus. David, do you think we're going to see Isaiah 17 fulfilled in the destruction of Damascus soon? I mean, I'm not saying tomorrow or the next day, but within the concept of our immediate future, that's going to, I mean, it's a target now. And Jacob has always said, look, it's almost destroyed now, but we're talking about Isaiah 17, where it says it will stop from being a city.
Yeah. Well, you know, Marco, I didn't think I'd be seeing this. I thought the things that are happening today, I thought I'd be gone on to my reward and everything. We'd be leaving it to you, you know.
Oh, thanks.
But, you know, so I don't see it as out of the realm of possibility. I've told the story before. I had a friend, he was in one of the elite units in Israel, and some of the men that worked in him became security people in Mossad and also took over, you know, for North America and South America. And they had a reunion in DC, and my friend went, and I said, he told me about his friends, and I said, can you ask him one question? And he said, well, what? And I said, ask your friend if Israel is ready for what their enemies have in store for them. And he said, and the answer came back, Hollywood in his best imagination doesn't know what we have in store for our enemies. Wow. So he seemed that was a pretty confident answer, you know, and there's all sorts of things of nuclear bombs buried in the desert and things like this that I've heard over the years. So Israel is a very powerful army and air force, but at the same time, they have their Messiah backing them. They won't lose Jerusalem.
Some of the prophecies, David, it would appear that they will come to a point where they will be driven out of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Seems like they were lose, and it's only because of the Messiah that they would be able to defeat their enemies. So I think there's some humility that will take place, and the fact that they're not invincible. They're not invincible, and I don't know what would it take to get to that point, but it seems like Israel is really trusting in their weapons and trusting in their armament,
and soldiers and horses and chariots. Yeah.
One of their greatest kings said, don't trust in horses and chariots.
But that's what I mean, that's what the scripture is written for them to understand, so that when the one comes, that they will look upon, that they pierced.
That's right.
He'll rescue them. But it's what's coming is I never thought I would see it, and I could easily see Damascus being gone, but it also talks about in Revelation about the seas rolling over Babylon.
Oh yeah, the ultimate destruction of Babylon is
Yeah,
predicted in the
you know,
Bible.
seas, if I understand that, and I can be corrected on this, Margot, it seems like the world's armies will roll over it, the seas, the nations.
The Revelation night, I think it's 18, sorry, the kings, the 10 kings would turn against Babylon and
Yeah.
will destroy it with fire. So there's a lot of things coming, and it's
Yep.
hard to include everything, but there are warnings against nations and cities of those nations that are predominantly Muslims today, like Amman, like Egypt, who are going to be severely hampered in some kind of conflict, including Damascus. And so there's more to come. So when I see these things in the Middle East, it's not, it's not propaganda. It's not, it's not pro-Western ideas. It's not like, well, we're going to make everybody afraid. These things are written in scripture long ago. Both Jewish scholars and Christian scholars have always agreed there's a conflict coming, a unity of nations coming against Israel. And somehow, and now obviously the Jewish scholars won't agree that it's the Messiah Jesus, but they agree that somehow, some way, God is going to intervene and deliver them from their enemies. I think what they're missing is the part that I think I'm going to talk about right now is how the role of the Antichrist in all this, because in the middle, it's probably the forgotten element. What's the missing ingredient in all this is that the Antichrist hasn't shown up. Now, I understand that some Christians, they have a certain view that they won't see the Antichrist. Other Christians believe that they will see the Antichrist, and so they're divided among that. But we all agree that the missing ingredient in the world today is that the Antichrist is not on the scene, but he's going to make quite a bit of headway in Israel with the false prophet, and bring a destruction, on the brink of destruction, to the Jewish people. David, can you elaborate a little bit more on that, the role of the Antichrist in Israel, within Israel?
Yeah, well, he gathers his troops, and I think Jacob always puts it like this, is that the Antichrist desires Jerusalem, and just when it seems like he's ready to take it, it will become his biggest defeat. He always says it'll be, what's that old saying? Defeat is snatched out of the jaws of victory, something like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's what ultimately will happen. Fortunately for us, we will be out of here by then, God willing. Yeah. So
It seems like the missing ingredient, obviously the false prophet too, I would include him in that, but they would deceive Israel. They would deceive Israel. And so how is Israel going to go along with this when it seems like this is for their destruction? How are they ever going to believe this man?
Peace, safety. The same thing. Remember what Israel did in Gaza? If you just give them Gaza, and you'll have peace. They gave them Gaza, and the missiles started like a couple days later. And, after the Palestinians destroyed all of the agricultural and hydroponics and all those warehouses, they bulldoze them, and then they set up their missiles and things like that. So they made so they couldn't feed themselves, keep the people poor.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? The Israel, what the one thing that they want is peace.
Peace.
The one thing that they want is peace with their neighbors, peace with their enemies. And it's all over their political statements. It's all over their religious statements.
Yeah.
And the thing that it's going to escape them the most is going to be peace. So they'll have some sort of peace and a covenant that will allow them to have some kind of religious sacrificial system, a temple, a tabernacle of some sort. And then that's when the Antichrist will come against them. So much to say about that, because of this wars are going to lead to some kind of peace and security desire.
Yep. And even have sacrifices for sin. you know,
That's right.
which a lot of Jews and some of the movements are wanting to have sacrifices for sin again. They know they're in trouble, you know.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick, David, because we've seen a record number of Jews going to the Temple Mount this season of Passover. Record number. It seems like every year there's a record number, and then the next year it breaks that record, and subsequent years break that record. So there's more Jews interested, as you mentioned, in dealing with sacrifices, dealing with sin offerings. And obviously they can't do any sacrifices and offerings at this point because they can only go to the Temple Mount. There's no temple, there's no tabernacle. They could only do reenactments of certain offerings. But a number of Jews have gone up there this year, but their prime minister, with all the controversy that he's gone through, he is banning them from entering the Temple Mount until Ramadan is over because of all the tension, all the problems, all the Muslims have been in the Mosque of Omar, and then they've gone in there and they're looking for terrorists, and then they're claiming that the IDF is harassing them. So most in Netanyahu's cabinet said this is a big mistake, not allowing the Jews to go up to the Temple Mount. Muslims can continue to do so, but not the Jews. So tensions in the temple. So not just tensions in Israel, not just tensions in Jerusalem. We're honing into the center of it all, the Temple Mount. David, you've been there plenty of times. Describe to us the atmosphere, some of the tension that you felt, some of the things you've seen, and whether or not you agree that this is a big mistake not allowing the Jews to go up there.
Well, I mean, it happens almost every holiday season, and more so when the Christian holiday and the Jewish holidays and the Muslim holidays all line up together. Tensions get really high, and so it's always been you close access to the Temple Mount. Both Jews and Christians have to go from the Kotel, where the Wailing Wall is, have to go up a single set of stairs and up a plank and up to the Temple Mount. Well, the Muslims believe they own it. The Jews believe they own it, you know, and they all forgot to read their Bible. It says God owns it. So, you know, they got the wrong landlord. So they're going to create this problem. So they just cut them off to try to lower the temperature. Let us get by Ramadan. Let us get past the holy days. And then things will start simmering down. And so that's always the way it's been. Like, but even when you go up there and there's not tension, and they allow the Muslims allow tourist trade to come up there and some Jews, but there's still attention. They still watch you. They still see what you're doing. You know, they follow groups and things like that. So there's always attention, but tamped down.
Yeah, no doubt. This is nothing different than any other year. Obviously, things move on and things become more intense than the previous year. And now you have Israel, Jewish people not wanting to go up there, not being able to go up there, even though they've been going up there in record numbers because of all the tension. And ultimately, it's going to lead to the fact that this Temple Mount is going to be the hottest place on the earth, the most intense place on the earth. This is where the Jews are going to rebuild the temple. So they believe they're going to rebuild the temple. And Islam does not want them to rebuild the temple. But David, it's scripture that the Antichrist will allow some form of negotiation for them to build the temple at some point.
A deal's going to get made, okay? That will somehow be able to satisfy the Muslims, be able to satisfy the Jews. You know, I went up there with Jacob one time, and from when you look at from the spirit of the cupola, the dome of the Spirit, and you line it up with the East Gate, many people believe that's where the sacrifice was. And the Mosque of Omar could easily have a wall put up between the two, and you could easily throw a tabernacle up, a tent, you know, and start the whole thing very quickly. You know, you don't have to build the temple for 4 years or anything like that. I mean, they may well build prefabrication or something like that to get something up there, but certainly a tent will do. I mean, in Shiloh, there was basically a tent for 200 years, you know.
It went into the temple, yeah.
Yeah, so, that's all you need. But they do, they've made so much progress with instruments for music, for all of training priest and the Kohanim and in the ceremony. So it could happen almost instantly if they made the deal. And to just be up there and start sacrificing. But what we know, one of the great verses is Hebrews 9, verses 13 and 14. What we know about these sacrifices, we know that the sacrifices were for kapara, to cover your sins, and they were for ceremonial cleansing of your flesh, as 9:13. If somebody has Hebrews 9:13, but it was Jesus' sacrifice that cleansed us from inside,
Of conscience.
yes, of our conscience. And in the millennial temple, we'll see these sacrifices starting again, because there's going to have to be a cleansing and a defilement of the millennial temple, because humans will be there working,
Yeah,
and the flesh. These sacrifices, not the one for sin, will be sacrifices that will cleanse them from defilement, to be able to work and all to minister before the Lord, just cleaning their defilement. But as they believe in the Lord and things like this, well, that's the Zadokites, and of course the Levites have a new role, securing the holiness. In fact, it's such an interesting thing when you read Ezekiel. You see that where God is, and he has a 50 cubic no man's zone around it. And so, because humans can't approach that close, because there will be mortal humans there working before the Lord, it says in the book of Ezekiel, ministering and offering these things, and nations have to come up. But at one point, all these people will, so these sacrifices and everything, I know the English word is atonement, at one with, but if you go, that's in 43 and 44, but if you go to 45, it says that it's kapor, to make atonement, to cover. Jacob always explained that to me like this. He said, every year you put your sins on the altar and you offer the sacrifice, and it's like covered.
yeah.
And they were all waiting for the day when there would be one that would come and take it all away. And that was Jesus's. So, but these are sacrifices in the millennial temple for defilement of the flesh. He makes them wear certain clothing so they won't sweat, because that's an issue that brought defilement to the priest and things like that. So we see that same thing again, but it's not for sin, but they would see these sacrifices that brought blood as what Jesus did. He died, and this is what it looks like, because there'll be people there that will never have seen death.
Yeah, we talk about the millennium. Yeah.
Yes, in the millennium there. But for the Jews now, they want to have this thing happen so bad. Every year it's more and more and more and more. And they'll be willing to make a deal with the devil himself.
It would be.
Well, the Temple Institute are getting really kind of excited at the moment, because by next year, before Passover next year, they should have a red heifer. It'll be of age, put it that way. As long as it'll pass the scrutiny, not having too many white hairs and that sort of thing. But they're really excited now that they can push the temple plans through more, because by early next year they should have hopefully will have a red heifer candidate. That's how they're thinking at the moment.
I've heard that about the red heifer down here in Senatova, south of me. They've been growing those so that they can have them, not one hair, not red. So it's very possible that would be put in place right away, because there's other Christians and others see this, that they've been working towards that, breeding.
Yeah, not to take it too far, because we got one more subject that we got to touch on.
sure.
We got page, but um, yep. Many Christians consider that the temple would be rebuilt at the beginning of that 70th week. David Lister, and any one of you, Jay or Davey, could it be possible also that the temple could be built before the beginning of the 70th week, meaning that temple could be standing there for, let's say, a year or two or some time, even before the covenant with the Antichrist is signed? I mean, would that could we consider that a possibility based on Daniel 9? It doesn't tell us that the temple has to be built at that moment. You know, most Christians will say it's at the moment of the 70th week is started, but it could start before the 70th week.
Yeah. Well, if you look at all the accords that Israel has had, they were always allowed to do certain things before the whole, they could start this. Let's move to step 1. Okay, step 2, step 3. So it's very possible. And then at the 7th, then when everything's in place, hey, look, it's going pretty good here, Yes, look, these guys are happy, these guys are happy. And then all of a sudden, let's now sign a covenant.
Yeah, it's and the reason why I brought this up, because so many Christians are hanging their hat on that very thing. We'll know when the 70th weeks begins is when the temple is rebuilt, and just to kind of give for food for thought, that's not what Daniel says. It specifically doesn't state that directly.
Right.
It could also mean that it could be standing there for some time, which would make people kind of go crazy, wouldn't it? To think that they were in the 7th, but it's not
Start marking
yet.
X's on their calendar.
Yeah. And I just offer that as food for thought, that before we jump to conclusions and just kind of assume certain things that we hear from books and pastors and that want to make the 70th week to be the end all to end all. It's the 3.5 years that's a key, but also the fact that a temple could be standing there before anything is even, even before the clock begins. I guess we could put it that way.
But could we could also say, if like one thing that always kind of brings some peace to me is when you look at Judas as a picture of Antichrist. We've known this, that he is, but he was revealed before it was night.
Correct.
Jesus gave people the information and the wisdom to understand who it would be. And I think if you're close to Jesus, we may know who this guy is before the world does, and we'll know, that's my
interesting point, David. But you would imagine, because like you said at the Last Supper, he says the one who dips it in this cup is the person who's going to betray me, but nobody paid attention. Now, amongst the followers of Jesus Christ, not one of them made the oh wait, it's Judas.
But see, he left, so they remember, it says in there that they stored these things up, but they did not understand everything. And when he opened their minds, they went, oh, got it. But fortunately for us, God has opened our minds to the scriptures. And yes, Antichrist is going to be a man of mystery, a man of deception, a man of intrigue, and have all these characteristics. But as we've studied these things, we should be able, because of God's wisdom and our relationship to him, be prepared, and it won't be, is it Gorbachev? Is it Prince Philip or King Philip now? Well, I don't know. It's not official yet, right?
No, I think they coronated him, didn't they?
Yeah.
No, I think it's a big coronation this summer.
Yeah.
Oh.
Charles.
Yeah. He's got like 4 crowns he's going to wear during this whole thing. It's going to be a big to-do. Biden ain't going to make it.
Let's finish off with this. Interesting thing is here's a movie, and a lot of Christians movies been made and shows have been made recently. Christians, I guess you could call it, on a wide spectrum, we'll put it that way. But a new movie has come out in Jesus' name. And it's reached the top 5 at the box office. Moviegoers are going there for stories of deliverance and having their own deliverance after the movie's over in those theaters. just turn it over to you guys. No one specifically in mind here, but just in general. What do you guys think about this movie? It was made by an organization that it's relies on deliverance ministries as a teaching, from Pastor Greg Locke to Alexander Pagani. These are, and several other ones are there. What do you guys think of this movie and some of the dangers that it's communicating? Because there are people that are very taken headlong into this with the belief that Christians can be demonically possessed, and therefore you need, after conversion, you need some kind of encounter with the Holy Spirit in order to deliver you, Christian deliverance, from these demonic spirits that you have. So some of the problems that you have, because you might be sinning as after becoming a Christian, you may sin, lust and gluttony and all this stuff. They're attributing it to demonic spirits within you that you need to have this procedure done. I'm just calling it just an encounter procedure in order to be, I guess, fully a Christian. So there's a lot of confusion. Just want to untie this because it's a very popular movie. Jacob mentioned it at the beginning, talking about it, but just wanted to turn it over to you guys. Is Hollywood really big on Christianity now, or is this just a rogue? This is a rogue movie that is.
They're really big on the money they can make from
Oh,
Christians.
the money. All right, we'll turn it over to you, Jay.
To me, it says in John, God, there is light, and in him there is no darkness. The Holy Spirit is a part of God. Okay. If it dwells within you, a demon cannot dwell within you and cohabitate with the Holy Spirit. Again, we can go back to a house divided cannot stand. If you are a believer in Jesus Christ is not going to leave you to be demonized. It just came out a few months ago. The Catholic Church has been performing increasing number of exorcisms in the Vatican. I believe the number was 800,000.
Oh man, increasing number. What's that movie, Jay? What's the movie that just came out? Is it called The Pope's Exorcist or something like that?
I don't.
Russell Crowe.
Yeah. Oh, I don't. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
The Gladiator
worries.
is now the Pope's exorcist.
Yeah. I think. Oh, The Pope's Exorcist. All right,
Pope's Exorcist. But yeah, Hollywood has an infatuation because it's easy. Horror genre is one of the best sellers, and it's probably the cheapest to make. And so now you have an audience of Christians who will be more open to being scared. But again, where does that come from? That our need to be scared is something for entertainment rather than something for instruction. We should fear God.
Yes,
that's right.
This movie in particular is very troubling because you do have a lot of Christians flocking to it, and they're going not understanding basic doctrine that you can't have demons and Christians being possessed by demons. It's just not scriptural.
Now, Greg Locke is NAR. He's one of the guys who prophesied Trump was going to come back and win the presidency in 2020. He definitely has some issues. He definitely left his wife for another woman. Quite a bit of litany of stuff. He's not too far from you, David. Maybe you should contact him and have some kind of. I'm just kidding. But you know what I'm saying.
I really didn't want to mention that he was in my backyard. I hate to claim him.
About that.
But we got some other problems in Nashville too, as any place that has large congregations. But I've been seeing deliverance ministry since I was born again. I mean, it's always been a popular thing. It's a good money maker. You come in, cash, lay your money down and we'll cast the demon out. Come back next week, we can get the one we missed. It's like that, because you'd see the same program and you'd see the same guy come back again, but a lot of it is, people have problems in their life. And like, I think you touched on it, Marco, is people say, well, I have, they're doing this sin. And so they name that sin. And so they name it as a spirit. And so I need that spirit out of me so I won't do that. But most of the time, it's just the sins of the flesh,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
your own personal choices to
lust,
make.
gluttony, all these things, it's just people quit doing. And Jay rightly stated, look, you cannot be born again and be, like he said, demonized, being possessed or having a spirit in you. Now, there is a teaching that you can be oppressed. In other words, you keep doing something in your life that is wrong, and you create a bad habit and everything. You can open yourself up to oppression, okay, and so repentance can solve that problem,
That's right.
and but if you're born again, you're giving your money and your time to these people for something that the Bible doesn't teach. And it just shows you really how far the church has fallen and how weak it is that it just keeps falling for the same bad theology and teachings, and this man is a false prophet, and
Yes,
they
he is.
still go back to him. And then the other guy is a money preacher, but I guess there's money in those demons, and so they the Christians are throwing their money after a Benny Hinn and a Kenny, and Kenny Copeland, so he can have another G5. It just, what a shame. All that money could be going to missions.
I just wanted to add sanctification also.
Yes.
You can have a problem with gluttony, you can have a problem with drugs,
Yes.
you can have a problem with all of these things. Sanctification has never been guaranteed as an instant thing.
Right.
That's right.
It's a
It's a lifelong
discipleship.
thing.
Yeah,
a
it's
lifelong
discipleship
thing.
is a long lifetime of learning
Yeah, that's right.
and being at the feet of the master, and slowly he sanctifies you
Daily.
little drop by little drop. If he were to force it all on once, his yoke is light. If his yoke was heavy, it would be a muzzle, and you would be doing exactly what he wanted you, and you would not have to worry about it. But his yoke is light because he knows our frame.
Yeah.
He knows we are but dust,
Yeah.
as the psalm says, and he will sanctify us to the point where all these sins that we still carry around in a lifetime will be gone.
Yes. He'll take them all away, won't he? They're already gone. That's if you're born again.
That's
You
right.
know,
In an instant,
but-
you'll be glorified in Christ Jesus.
But
So
it is important to stay close and to confess and to keep that list. And when you drop your cross, like you're saying, pick it up and get back on. You get victory. What's really cool is you get victory over some of these things in your life, and you're so glad and everything. And then God goes, okay, we got that one. Now let's work on this one.
Amen. Amen.
Wait a minute, give me another day or two.
So shortcuts to discipleship. Get your demons cast out, and that's a shortcut to holiness. And there is no shortcut to holiness.
That's
There
right.
is one way to holiness, and that is the cross of Jesus. Pick up your cross, follow him. But David, you've seen this before. I mean, this is not a new phenomenon. What is interesting to me, I never thought a movie would be top 5 based on that very thing. That's what's most interesting to me. This teaching's been around a while, but now it's permeated mainstream Christianity, where a lot of Christians will have this idea, whether it's soul ties, whether it's being possessed by demons, as a way of sanctification to cast them out. That's mainstream now. And so I think there needs to be, again, a reiterating of the discipleship that Jay was talking about, making sure believers know the truth. And David, let me ask you this, and as we finish, how dangerous would be for a new believer to fall into these doctrines? Because we can look at it, we can laugh about it in some ways. We can see them at the movie theater trying to cast demons out. And I guess what the anecdotals have been is that people have been delivered at the movie theater. Some demons have been cast out. And so they say, see, this is true. This is real. But how dangerous is it for a younger believer to fall into these traps? You've seen it as a Christian, as a pastor, as a teacher. How dangerous are these things?
it is dangerous because you're having people, the Bible says, do not be quick to let others lay hands on you. And they want to lay hands on you, and you don't even know what spirit they're imparting into you, and you're also going to false teachers, false prophets, and you're putting yourself under these people. That right there shows you that you have no discernment and that you're willing to follow these guys. And what does it say of false teachers? That he leads the blind and both go into the ditch.
That's right.
So it's ultimately a shipwreck of your faith and a road that takes you away from the salvation found in Jesus Christ and the impartation of his holiness into you by being born again. That imputed righteousness that is a free gift of God. That it wasn't free, but it cost him everything,
Hey, David, what do you think about another David Lynn in Canada, in Vancouver, who recently came under some fire because he was baptizing people at the beach in Vancouver, and the LGBT community, the very loving community, came out and they protested against him. They assaulted him. They kicked him out. They wanted to get rid of him. He continued, and he actually baptized people. It was quite an amazing video that I watched. But what do you think of again, we looked at it last week, the LGBT community coming against Christians. You see a movie like Come Out in Jesus' Name, and then you see people being baptized under hostile conditions. Are we going to see more of this? I mean, this is another church issue that we wanted to address.
Yeah, we're going to have more rise of persecution against Christians, and the left is going to keep rising. Look, I've been seeing things on the internet as I read and everything. I thought this meant hook 'em horns, like from Texas, University of Texas.
Yeah, the Longhorns, yeah.
But I see people, and I seen like the other day, Helen Mirren, an Academy Award winning actress, meeting up with Lady Gaga, and they said "Hail Satan" to each other. I'm seeing this with people on stage. I'm seeing it everywhere, and it's almost like these people are saying that this is our time. Now is the time to act. It's like there's this spirit over the age that now you can go against Christians. Look, the Christians are the problem. They were always against you. They've been this way forever. So now's our time. That's just what some of the things that I'm seeing. And so I think this spirit is driving them because these people don't know God. And so another spirit can easily take and guide them, and there are many times these people are spiritual, but they're listening to a wrong teaching. They're wanting something in their life. Their life is empty. And so if Satan can imitate this, he'll be glad to take the place.
In the middle of persecution, Christians are resorting to casting out a false belief into casting out demons out of believers, instead of really realizing where we are in history as Christians and sharing Christ and bringing disciples and standing with the gospel against the onslaught of evil. I guess we got into entertainment more than biblical doctrine. So it is quite amazing.
Got to put this in you. And there's one of the early histories, I think is Eusebius wrote, that men of God went into towns and preached the gospel and demons fled.
Yeah,
that's right.
And then there's this ministry, I think it was like they went into really, really hard places, primitive areas and everything. And they went into a village and I think there's a video of this, and they got together after going there and they saw the demonic things going on, and they got together and they conferred and they said, well, what should we do? Should we do this deliverance and they came to this conclusion: preach the gospel. Get people born again. Simple solution.
Yeah. And when you read the book of Acts, it's not that we're saying that demonology or spirits, false spirits, demons
you said that,
are not real. Yeah, they're not real. They are real. In fact,
They
we see
are.
them in the book of Acts. We see them how is dealt with the most important point it was trying to address is the fact that how you deal with unbelievers and demonic spirits, it's much different than a Christian struggling and having to deal with his sin and repenting and believing. And but you're right, David, this demonic activity in society rising up, first they mock, then they marginalize, now they persecute, and it's sort of following a pattern of history, that they used to mock Christians, marginalize Christians, now they attack Christians. And so we need to know the time and the season in which we live so we can act accordingly, we can act properly, and we can say, well, this is what we do in this circumstance. It's how the Holy Spirit is leading us in this circumstances. Right now, it's preach the word, make disciples, live a holy life, and know the time in which we live in, because it's
right.
It's an interesting time. All the things we talked about, it comes down to a personal decision, doesn't it? You can't
Yeah.
control the wars, you can't control the earthquakes, you can't control the monetary system of the world, but you could control your faith in Jesus Christ, meaning that you could draw closer to him. You can draw further from him by apathy and by sin and by listening to false teachers, or you can make your calling and election sure by coming closer to Jesus Christ.
Get discipled, find someone to help you grow in your faith. Marco is just great teachings, read your Bible, read a lot of those books that we have on recommended reading, and so that you can mature in your faith. That's what God wants to do with us, is to mature us to a point of being able to discern between good and evil and right and wrong. And so that you'll hear that, well done, faithful servant.
Amen. Amen.
Marco,
Well,
you mentioned one thing. I just want to say something real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned the
absolutely.
things that we don't have control of. We don't have control of the wars. We don't have control of where
Yes.
society's going for the most part. One thing we absolutely do have control of. You have control of what you watch. You have control of what you read. You have control of what you hear. All of those things are on you to avoid the wickedness of this age. Do not
That's right.
participate with unfruitful deeds of darkness, but expose them. That's
Yes.
that's what we're supposed to do.
Yep.
Well
And
said,
God has
Jay.
given us that wonderful gift, isn't it? To be able to choose and be able to say no to sin and draw close to the Lord. And I remember that little song, be careful what your little eyes, what you see, be careful little ears, what you hear, be careful little feet where you go. And that was a children's song, and it was wonderful, but has so much wonderful principle about what we watch, handle, and go. And that's what a Christian is to, of course, avoid those things. So thank you so much. God bless you guys. We're going to go into backstage. So we're going to be switching over out of Facebook and out of YouTube into the other platforms. We'll take questions on Rumble, but we're still on the other platforms, Moriel.tv, Vimeo, Telegram. I'm missing another one. RTN.
Moriel
Moriel
TV, MorielTV.org.
Yeah, I got the-
Moriel, be
those.
alert. Yeah.
Yeah, the channel, absolutely. So Facebook and YouTube, have a great evening. God bless you guys, and join us on Backstage when we talk about the leaked documents and questions for David Lister. See you there.
Hello, and thank you for watching Moriel TV. There are so many things that are happening at Moriel Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan to India to Africa and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.